Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adult Child of Dysfunction. Today, we have with us Jean Widner. She is a domestic adoptee born in 1965 and raised in Washington State. After having a mostly positive adoption experience growing up, she now shares her evolving story navigating adoption's complexities in her book, The Adoption Paradox, Putting Adoption in Perspective. Welcome, Jean. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Tammy. I really appreciate it.
No, I think it's important that we have these discussions because so many people have the misconception of kind of like, oh, adoption, it's a win win. Like everybody wins. The child that maybe wasn't wanted or parents died or whatever happened, whatever reason they were put up for adoption, they now have a loving family. And so you think the story ends there. And from what I've talked to people, it most certainly does not end there.
Yeah, no, adoption begins with the adoption, not the other way around. It's only the start of what is a lifelong journey for most of us as adoptees. And quite frankly, I think also both sets of our parents. We evolve as human beings, we grow as human beings. There's the reference that I have as a child for what it meant to be adopted. And then there's how that reference has changed throughout my life. And then my parents have been on the same journey.
So both your parents were adopted, or both your parents were on the journey of having an adoptee?
Both of my parents were on the journey of having an adoptee. Totally
Okay.
distinguishing, right?
Yeah. And you also, I don't know whether we talked or whether you put it in a form or what it was, but you mentioned alcoholism.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
was that you? I don't know, obviously don't know any of your history, and we'll kind of scatter that throughout the story as we talk here. But was that from the parents that put you up for adoption, or was that your growing up parents, your adoptee?
That was my raising parents.
Okay.
My adoptive parents were, I mean, very quintessential for their time. They got married in 1962. My father actually knew that he could not conceive. And so when they were ready to start a family, they just immediately went down to an adoption agency and began the process. So I come into their home in 1965, but unfortunately, my adoptive mother really didn't have herself a very happy childhood. Her mother was actually also a very mean-spirited alcoholic.
Mm.
And my mother's coping mechanism, unfortunately, had been to crawl inside of a bottle of prescription pills and alcohol way before I even came onto the scene. I mean, she was a registered nurse, so she was very good at hiding her habit. And so that made it extremely hard because you have what was unknown to us back then, but I'm actually grieving the loss of my mother because I'm separated from her almost from birth. I was then fostered for 2 months. So I'm born to one woman that I'm bonded to, but I'm immediately removed from her. Then I'm fostered for 2 months. And then I land in the arms of my mother, who, of course, I desperately need, and I desperately need to bond to her. But anyone, I'm assuming that, since you have a show here that's talking about dysfunction, an addict is not available to be bonded to,
No.
so I really lost, I think, a lot in that. And as a child, of course, I didn't understand what was going on. All I knew was I had an incredibly emotionally inaccessible and very inconsistent mother. That's all I knew growing up. And of course, when you're a kid, everything is egocentric.
Yeah.
You're the source of everything. So of course, I was the source of my mother's pain and shame that I didn't understand that's coming out as all of this erratic behavior. So it was rough. It was
Yeah.
not fun.
Now, when did you find out you were adopted?
I grew up knowing. So
Okay.
they must have told me through bedtime stories and all the things that they recommend that parents did back then.
Okay. So it was never, and back then you were born about the same time I was. There, like you said, there wasn't this knowledge of the fact that when a child is separated at birth, doesn't matter from their parent, it doesn't matter what happens to them or where they go. There's going to be this subconscious or even physiological longing, need, abandonment type wounds.
Mhm. Yeah, that's correct. I mean, my dad was a school psychologist, and he's quoting what was known then as the blank slate theory. I mean, I remember my dad literally saying that anything that happens before conscious memory forms up around the age of 2 or 3, maybe 4, it's different for all of us, but anything that happens before conscious memory doesn't affect you.
Hmm.
So therefore, I wasn't affected by adoption.
Wow. So talk about what research says now.
Research has gone 180 degrees from that. There's even, research about what happens to us in the womb. I mean, if you have a woman who is encountering a very stressful pregnancy, under extreme stress, that can actually affect the formation of our brain. The size of our amygdala can be actually larger, which is our fear center in our brain. That's the oldest part of our brain down there in the limbic system. So if my mother is undergoing a stressful pregnancy, I'm therefore sort of literally being formed, if you will, sort of awash in stress hormones, and that's going to affect my development. Then I come out of the womb and nature has us bonded to our mothers. We know her smell, we know her voice, we've been dining on her cuisine, we know her gait. We intrinsically know her. We have been trading stem cells back and forth
Mm-hmm.
throughout the pregnancy. And so you now have this huge amount of evidence that is out there that is talking about the intrinsic bond between a mother and her newly born child. And this is true in the animal kingdom as well as the human one. And then there have been studies that have been done on mice. They have been done on various, rhesus monkeys and other species that show that if you separate an infant from its mother, even if it's receiving proper care and feeding from another identical species mother, they show signs of struggle,
Yeah.
even in an animal. And what's interesting too is one of the studies that I was reading said it would be too cruel to conduct this experiment on humans, except that is exactly what adoption is.
Hold on hold on one second. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. My dog is absolutely crazy little pug. But anyway, you were saying,
Right. Well, and we were talking about species. We were talking about different animals, that if they're separated from their mother, you would never separate a puppy from its mother sooner than 8 weeks, would you?
no, so true. And that's not just physiological. You're right. I mean, it makes sense. Total
Yeah.
sense.
No, you know, this is what nature created. Nature has me bonded to my mother, and my mother is bonded to me. And we have decided in adoption that for the welfare of the child, and I'm using the air quotes there, that it's necessary sometimes to separate me. And sometimes it is, okay? Sometimes, if a child is in an unsafe environment, it absolutely does need to be put into a safe environment. But that isn't the way that most adoption is practiced in the US. And that certainly wasn't the case for me. In 1965, my mother was shamed into relinquishing me because she was an unwed, young 18-year-old woman. And that wasn't okay. And that's what happened to all of us in that era.
So, and of course, then there's no extra support for you. It's just, I mean, how many kids grow up their whole lives and never even know they're adopted or no, and they've got to feel this, it's a physiological thing. It's this void. And so and if you never know why you feel a little different or a little off, or you have a longing, or you maybe never quite connect to your other mother.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because even what we call late discovery adoptees, which is unfortunately a thing, some of them report feeling that something is off, others don't. Because the thing of it is if you take me away from everything that I know, and then you put me in this situation where at least there's now this constant caregiver. She's mine and I'm hers. We're going to figure out my survival mechanism is now to try to bond to her because I need to survive.
Right.
My infant baby brain is still going to say, well, okay, this is how we get fed. This is how we get love. This is how we get care. This is how we get our needs met. And the thing of it is, though, that implicit memory still sits there in the core, but then other memories start to build up on top of it. But you still have that core that was formed under loss. And we just don't understand that. And we're starting to. And there's starting to become these wonderful new modalities, EMDR therapy. There's microdosing. There's, all different types of therapies that are starting to be able to get people down and into and access that feeling of loss and touch that and then be able to release it and try to heal from it. So, but that's the whole thing is our entire society is in denial of the fact that there's something to heal from. What's
Exactly.
the matter with you? You should be grateful. Your parents love you. You have a great family. What's the problem?
Yeah. No, and that's one of the stigmas. I just did a summit in December on shattering the stigmas, and one of the talks that we talked a lot about was the stigma of adoption trauma.
Mhm.
And we talked a lot about the guilt on both sides of that. There was the adoptee who felt guilty that they wanted to at least learn about their mother and figure out their history and go through some of these therapies to open up their subconscious programming and kind of rewire to it's okay and this is what and it was really enlightening. I was completely naive to it, I will admit. And so I love these conversations because I think a lot of us are naive to it. And that's why these conversations are so good. Awareness. If you're not aware. And you're right, it is very easy to say, how dare you? Your adopted mother raised you and fed you and took care of you and paid for you and sent you to school and did soccer and did all this. And it's like, yes, but there is still something before I was able to make a choice, before I was able to process it and put it in a different pile and deal with it differently, that has to be dealt with. I get it.
Yeah, no, and I'm so glad that that conversation happened for you at that other retreat where it's just bringing it into a retreat that's not about adoption, but it got talked about. And I think that that's so important because I think there's lots of things like that where our society hasn't acknowledged, deep pain. I mean, there's a reason why Besser van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Favorite book.
It's right. And it's up on the New York Times bestseller list for how many years?
Mm-hmm.
Because it resonates with people and certainly with people outside of the adoption community. But it's the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about implicit memory. We're talking about that our body and our nervous system are actually far more in charge than we thought that they were in the
Mm-hmm.
past. And it's about reconciling that. And who wouldn't want to know more about their own self? And who wouldn't want to know more about their own child?
Right. Exactly. So talk a little bit about more on, I don't know how much of the conversation you want to spend on this, but growing up with the non-available parent, what kind of support did you get as far as like at what age, I guess I'm asking at what age did you realize maybe some of the adoption stuff should have been brought into play as far as a conversation?
That's a funny one. Only just after I started writing my book, in all honesty. I mean, to walk back a little bit, to my family's journey, with addiction, things were kind of messed up for a long time. My dad was in complete denial of the fact that, my mother had a pharmacy in her house and he was not willing to pay attention to the fact that there were easily 100 different prescription pill bottles for god knows what that my mother was managing. And when I was 13 to 15 is when she started to come out of that and she went into AA and then she got help. First she got off the alcohol, eventually she did get off the pills, and then she began her healing journey. But a lot of our damage had already been done. There'd been a lot of trust that had already been violated and things were pretty tough. When I was in my mid 20s is when then I began my journey. I realized that I was a good person and I was capable of having good relationships, but I wasn't evolving and maturing the way that I saw my peers around me. I was in a relationship that I really wanted to make work with a man who eventually does become my husband. It is still today, but I wasn't in a good place and I wasn't showing up in a relationship like a grown-up should. And so I did write to my parents and I said, I have a feeling the alcoholism has something to do with this. And so my mom sent me into ACA and I did that work and I spent 15 years evolving out of that. But I still had absolutely no idea that the adoption piece was lying underneath of that. And it's so funny because like even when I was interviewing people for the book, other fellow adoptees, there were so many times when I would be having a conversation Oh, you had a great experience. Okay, that's great. So we sit down to do a recording very much like we are here today. Oh, but there was an eating disorder that you had. Or,
Mhm.
oh, you don't do well in long-term relationships with really anybody. Or, oh, you struggle with ADHD, or, alcoholism has been a thing, or you've had suicidal ideation throughout your teen years or made several attempts, and on and on and on it goes. But I had a great adoption.
I was going to say, and I was waiting for that, but regardless of the fact that I grew up in a quote unquote stable, happy, loving house.
Yeah. 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 And so that's the problem is we have, adoptees attempt or commit suicide at 4 times the national average. We significantly overrepresent in addiction and addiction treatment. We significantly overrepresent in eating disorders and all sorts of other things. So clearly something is going on there if we're even ahead of a population that we know is already really struggling with these issues as it is, right? In our culture.
Right.
And so that's something that we need to pay attention to and we shouldn't blow off. To bring it back to the question that you initially asked me, which was my journey. After I learned and read all of this, there were still things that all of that work that I had done didn't touch. There's that deep, deep seated feeling of unworthiness that I've still never been able to really touch through talk therapy and through anything else. And I'm like, oh, okay, because my personality formed up under a shadow of loss. Okay. And that shame and unworthiness that my mother felt possibly seeping into me even in the womb, and certainly then again in separation. There's a hypervigilance to me, which a lot of adoptees share, Um, I'm always on high alert. And I've also been something of a chameleon personality. These are all coping mechanisms that are
And they're all,
human.
and for people on this podcast too, adult child of dysfunction, they're all things that we experience. If you grew up with two alcoholic parents or a drug addict parent or whatever it was, you're going to have all these regardless. So it's
Yes.
interesting that after 15 years in ACA, which for anybody that's not been on this podcast before, it's adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families now. So it deals with all of that. But for people after 15 years of that to still go, oh, there's still something missing. It's like, what is the other piece? Like,
Right.
what is the big time event that happened before you were 7 that needs to be explored? And clearly, that is the fact that you were separated from your mother. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's the thing. And I think, again, there's that stigma. You mentioned stigma. It's like so many of us as adoptees will be like, no, I'm fine. What are you kidding? I'm fine. There's nothing to see here, you know? And all I can say is for me, it was so liberating and so relieving and so releasing and freeing to just go, oh God, there it is. Thank you. Thank
no.
you for giving me, some new tools and a new level of understanding to know this is what's going on. Okay.
And I love that you just said that because I deal with a lot of people that get like a late in life diagnosis of ADHD, or, they get this, they're all of a sudden told they're bipolar at 48 years old or something. And it is liberating. It's all of a sudden like, wow, so I tell people, it's not label yourself and give yourself another stigma. It's realize now that you have more tools. Now you go, okay, so what groups are out there for adoptees, and
Yep.
what resources are out there, and what podcasts do I get on and listen to? And now it's like, oh, because sometimes it just takes one comment and you go, oh, that's me. I can remember some of those comments where I'm just like, oh, I get it now.
Sure. No. And it was liberating to walk through the doors of adult children of alcoholics. It was liberating to sit in that room and liberating to get that toolkit. And I'm very, very grateful for that growth prior to this,
Yeah.
because this is its own kind of rupture.
Oh,
And and then it's like, okay, but yeah, like you said, I mean, I'm 60 years old, you know,
oh,
and
you
I
don't
still
look
have,
60.
thank you. But I mean, it's like, I've still got, I don't know how many more decades left, but I want to make the best of them. And now I have, again, more tools. I have new ways to engage in self-talk with myself that can go, okay, why am I feeling so incredibly squirrely right now? What's going on? Why do I suddenly have this jolt of fear in my gut that has nothing to do with the situation? What's going on? Okay, what is this? And you can walk it through that.
Right. What are some of the tools? So what are some of the things that you do? Are there certain support groups that were out there for adoptees, or what? Talk to me about some of your process once you realized this was something that you were going to have to deal with.
Absolutely. Community is incredible. It is absolutely wonderful to get into a community of other people who have had similar experiences that, like you said, that aha moment of that person saying that thing. Um, it's sort of, we used to have a phrase in my ACA group, whereas you didn't always hear what you wanted to hear, but you heard what you needed to hear that day. And so the wonderful thing is there are online support groups. There are in-person ones too. But one of the good things, of course, that came out of the pandemic is so much of this stuff went online. So now, I mean, I'm really, really grateful to be tied into a local Adoptees Connect group here in the Las Vegas area where I live. But I participate in online meetings all over the place. So there's Adoption Knowledge affiliates, there's Adoption Network Cleveland, Adoption Mosaic. There are tons of other support groups for all parts of the constellation, is what we like to say, because there's adoptees, and that's what we're focusing on because that's my story. But there's adoptive parents and adoptive and foster parents. There's adoptees who are transracially or internationally adopted. There's the birth parent support groups.
Right.
There's people who have a DNA surprise. There's a whole nother, layer of support coming up around them and donor conceived people. So we're a big tent now. And
Right.
that is a wonderful thing to it's just like you walk in the door and you can take off your mask, right? You can just sit down and know that whatever thing is whirling around in you, you can just say it and it's going to be okay. And it doesn't mean that it has to define you. It doesn't mean that it has to be the thing that dominates you for, weeks and years. It's just that place to put it and have people who understand it.
Well, it's a safe place to put it. And yes, that's the key, is that people resonate. So when you tell people, come to me all the time and go, I can't go to ACA, they'll never understand. Oh, I bet they will.
Yes, they will. Yes,
Your
they will.
story and your location, your geographic location may have been different. Your house may have been yellow and mine was blue, but at the end of the day, we all had the same stories, just different little tweaks on them.
Right.
So, yes, it's somebody completely and totally understands. And I love that. So, talk about your book a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. That was an undertaking that I'm glad to be on the other side of, I'm really proud of, but boy, oh boy, was it an adventure. I really, really wanted to do research, and I need to go belly up here and make sure that you know that I'm a layperson, I'm a business person. That's what I am. I don't have any initials after my name. I don't work in the mental health field. I haven't been a part of the child welfare system. But I got this crazy idea. I was very inspired by a book that came out 2006, 2007, called The Girls Who Went Away. She focused on interviewing birth mothers from my era, and particularly what's known as the baby scoop era between World War II and 1973. And Ann Fessler wrote this amazing book that combined research and storytelling. And I knew I wanted to do the same thing, but I wanted it to be from all sides of the constellation. So I interviewed adoptees who were foster care alumni, internationally adopted, transracially adopted. I interviewed birth or first parents who had relinquished children. I interviewed adoptive parents and foster parents. I interviewed therapists and other experts in the field, and uh, nearly talked to almost 100 people, and then spent 3 years researching the book. And so created the adoption paradox. We do a deep dive. Everybody gets their say.
Mm, love
So
it.
yeah, yeah. And then we do
And
talk about some of the crazy laws and all the other things and reunion and all of that. So
and how freeing and liberating and healing for you every time you heard a story. How many layers of your onion did you unpeel while you were doing those, talking to those 100 people?
No, they peeled through layers. I peeled through layers, and
Mm-hmm.
all the more so in kind of writing and pulling. It was I felt like I had this incredible tapestry with all of these threads, and I was trying to pull it together in a picture that would make sense for people. And I think I managed to do that.
Well, and I'm sure you did. And not only that, but it's like I have this series going on right now called the Collective Wisdom Healing Series, because I want people from all different walks of life to give their story. And, like there might be 17 different versions of boundaries, 17 different courses you can take in the series on just boundaries. But your perspective is different. So you're literally talking, you got 100 perspectives on a huge, like you said, umbrella topic. So it's not just you. It's not just Jean Widner saying, this is what happened to me. It's literally a ton of people. And you just were the godsend that put it all together.
I'm just a conduit. That was the thing is I genuinely tried, I'm not a reporter and I don't play one on TV, but I genuinely tried to approach this from just this is the information that I learned. Here it is, and here are these stories, and this is where it took me. And I do have a critical eye toward the industry, without a doubt. I think adoption in America, I think our child welfare system in America is in trouble. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
you
a
know.
whole nother podcast.
That is a whole nother
I
podcast.
was gonna say that's a whole nother episode, girl. But no, I mean, I've never understood that from the beginning. I'm like, why do people go to like South Africa to adopt a baby when there's millions of babies right here in the foster system? Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. Don't ask me. But no, it's great that there's an advocate and somebody, they need more and more. And they need more awareness.
That's the thing is, I mean, um, I take a keen eye toward the system, but a kind eye toward the people involved. The people involved haven't created the system, and systems don't serve love well. They
No.
really don't serve love. And I think that we have a bunch of well-intentioned people in our child welfare system and adoption system who are genuinely trying to do good. But I think so many people haven't been given the proper tools. And in order for any adoption to be successful, it needs to be better for the adoptee. And so it's like they need to be the center and the core of any and all adoptions and all adoption practices. And again, when you talk to adoptive parents, it's like so many of them are frustrated because they weren't given tools.
Right.
And that's the thing. I mean, a good parent will do anything so that their child does not struggle or suffer. You know, a good parent will chew off their right arm so that their kid is doing better, in life and in whatever, all of the variables that get handed to families. And parents get really frustrated when they weren't told what to expect. That what do you mean my child is grieving? What do you mean my infant has actual grief and trauma that they need to recuperate from? And how do I help them?
Right.
So that's the thing is ignorance hurts us all.
Mm-hmm. It really does. Knowledge is so powerful and so key. And I appreciate what you do. I appreciate you spreading the word. I just absolutely love it. For anybody out there who either has been adopted, knows somebody, or has adopted a child, or knows somebody in that situation, grab the book and just, if nothing else, I mean, like she said, she's just a person. She's a layperson. She's not a doctor. She's not a scientist. But with coaching, with healing, with everything else in life, what is more powerful than a doctor's book is somebody with lived experience,
Mhm.
that somebody's been through it and can guide you towards healing and different things and different people's situations. Oh, I absolutely love it. So I'm going to put the link to the book in the show notes for sure, and any other links. So do you take calls? Do you coach? Like, tell me what you do in this arena, if
Yeah.
anything.
If anything, what I'm trying to do is, I mean, I have a newsletter list. I do try to inform people of community events that are happening, of news that is happening in the industry. And again, to be an advocate for improving things. And so, please join me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's knowledge is power, guys. Knowledge is power. And especially in something that we all, because that's the problem with stigmas around things and not and ignorance around things, and not meaning that you're bad if you're ignorant to something. It just means you don't know what you don't know. But as soon as you know something, you can treat those people a little differently. You can help, you can have a little more empathy and a little more compassion towards the subject, which is kind of what I'm trying to do, is open up people's eyes to the fact that just because you don't know something does not mean you stay away from it, you shy away from it, you turn your back to it, or you ridicule it. You just embrace it and know that there's more to learn and learn. I mean, that's really what we're all here to do, is to learn and grow. But if
Mhm.
you could, well, first of all, thank you so much, Jean, for coming on. I absolutely love this.
Thank you. It's been great to visit with you. What a great conversation.
Yeah. And for the people out there listening, first, I'm not letting Jean off the hook, because I always ask the guests to leave the listeners with maybe something to make their day a little better, a little something tangible, something they can do, a tip or trick. Anything you got, Jean? What's your final words of wisdom here?
Final words of wisdom are never be in silence, never be alone. My final words of wisdom are always, it's like, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling lonely, if you think no one will understand, whatever it is, call a friend. Call a friend, meet them at the park, meet them for coffee, go for a walk. Um, Live in community as much as you can. And again, it doesn't have to be a big deal. Maybe even it's sometimes sending someone a text message, you know, whatever you're doing, live in community and make it a part of your daily routine to try to do so.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jean.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. For everybody else out there listening, another great story of hope and healing. And she been through the muck. I mean, we all have. We've all been through stuff, but look at her smiling, look at her happy, and look at her with all that knowledge to share with the world. So tune back in next week and we will see who's next. You guys have a blessed day. Love you all. Bye.
Bye.